Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for the second day of the SUNY Library Research Showcase. This is the first year we've done the showcase, and we decided to have it during National Library Week. I forgot to mention that yesterday. And yesterday was such a success. We heard from 5 different research projects across SUNY, and I think this will probably be the start of an annual tradition during Library Week. So we're joined today by presenters from SUNY Fredonia, Stony Brook University, and Suffolk Community College. And each session will be around 30 minutes. We will include time for questions within that. And if you have questions during the session, please throw them in the chat and our presenters will get to them. We are recording today's session and we will share the slides and the recording link after the conclusion of the showcase. So I will turn it over to the folks from Fredonia.
All right, thank you, Corey. So good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today and happy National Library Week. My name is Christina Hilberger. I am the Research and Information Literacy Services Librarian at SUNY Fredonia. And then I also coordinate library instruction services at Reed Library. And I am pleased to be presenting with my incredible colleagues who have been doing some amazing collaborative work across campus. Today, we're going to be sharing a couple of projects that we've been working on that I think really highlight the important role that librarians play in supporting research and scholarship, and then also experiential learning opportunities for students. So I'm going to have each of the presenters introduce themselves when it's their turn to share, just to save a little time. But before we kind of dig into the specifics of our projects, I wanted to provide a little context, a brief overview of SUNY Fredonia for those of you who aren't familiar with our campus. So SUNY Fredonia is a comprehensive liberal arts university. We're about 50 minutes south of Buffalo, New York. And we have a wide range of degree programs in liberal arts, education, music, business, and more. And currently we have a team of 4 librarians actively providing library instruction. So if you were here yesterday, our librarian Mandy Shep, and then Scott Richmond and Caitlin Telford and myself. So we're a small team, but we try to find ways to involve ourselves in the library in all sorts of ways across campus. Okay, to get us started though, I'm going to ask my colleague, Dr. Mike Chabot, to introduce himself, and we're going to talk a little bit about our project and initiatives relating to open science. So, Mike.
Thanks. Well, I'm very honored to be asked to be part of this presentation. It is an absolute honor, and I am humbled to work with Christina and the other librarians that I have the privilege of working with. I'm going to just give a brief description of what we did and then turn it back over to Christina. But the focus last year was a focus from NASA on the Year of Open Science. And so the Year of Open Science, in working with Christina, we expanded how that looks in research on our campus, in particular in the STEM fields, but open science goes well beyond just the sciences. Our focus here was to try to bring student researchers, the students that I work with in Earth system science, to give them an experience in what it means to work in the idea of open science and open data. So this Earth as a System course is a general education course, focuses on the interaction between Earth system science and the impact that that science has on the lives of people. And one of the pieces there is to look at how local weather conditions contribute to the broader climate model. So that's where you see this weather data project. Christina partnered with me across the 2 semesters so far to build out their understanding of how the library contributes to this idea of open, whether it's open data, open publishing, and all that, and the unique idea of creating an ORCID account, which gives them that permanent identifier. And then what we do is use that permanent identifier as we publish these data sets for scientists to use. How'd I do, Christina? Did I do okay?
No, that was great. Yeah, so kind of building off of that, what this sort of we started this conversation with NASA and the White House and other federal agencies sort of declaring the year of open science. And that was sort of aligning nicely with the project that Mike was doing with his students, and also with some of the opportunities that the Office of Library and Information Services was offering in terms of their consortia agreement with Dryad, which is an open publishing platform that allows us a space to store data. And it was nice because we could do some faculty-oriented workshops, but then we were kind of taking this idea and bringing it to the classroom. So in terms of library instruction, the goal was really to sort of help familiarize students with, again, some of those concepts of open science and how they're becoming more commonplace, something that we thought it was important for the students to have a basic understanding of some of the terminology and what it means. We looked at sort of and had conversations about the typical publication traditions and how we're kind of shifting away from that in terms of trying to make things more efficient, greater collaboration, and then more research transparency, so people are familiar and comfortable with accessing this information. So one of the other things that we mentioned was sort of, the COVID-19 pandemic and the importance of being able to move things along more quickly than you could with typical publishing processes. So that's sort of how we open up the conversation. And then we do go into creating an ORCID ID. So if you're not familiar with ORCID, that's an open researcher and contributor ID. This is something that is persistent, and it's basically a profile where you can showcase all of your research outputs and projects and things like that. And so for these students in EDU 226, we thought it would be helpful for them to get their account set up, talk about what it means and how it can distinguish you and your research outputs, but also the importance in terms of grant applications in the future, and that being sort of a requirement. So they're kind of ahead of the game and have an idea of sort of the new standards that are kind of becoming more commonplace. So, and it doesn't necessarily have to be used strictly for faculty or researcher outputs. It's a great way to showcase students' projects, so poster presentations, papers, theses, whatever it might be. And then in this case, for the class, with the data that they're collecting, Mike's going to be putting that into Dryad. And then we'll have, as a requirement, by the end of the library instruction session that we did, they have their ORCID ID, and then we can associate their project, the data that they collected with them, so they have a nice little attribution acknowledgement of their work on the project. Mike, is there anything else you wanted to add about the project or the collaboration?
No, I think it's important to note that this at some level, I guess, is a little bit controversial. I think it's important that we're doing this work, but I don't want anyone to think that there isn't differences of opinion about a move towards open science, open data, open publishing. Christina, thanks for pointing out, though, every federal agency now has signed on to this open science. So all funding, whether it's NIH or Department of Energy or NASA, has as the expectation that your work will be open. No periods where the data is sort of sequestered and held beyond instrumentation kinds of things. So it's I think helping students in particular in the STEM fields to understand sort of the landscape of what they'll be entering when they leave here. So.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's an important component of that sort of science literacy and what they're going to be encountering as they move forward in their careers. So thank you so much, Mike. We'll be open to questions at the end for all three of the groups. So I'm going to ask Scott Richmond and Dr. Christina Jarvis to introduce themselves and their fantastic lip balm project.
All right, good morning.
Hello.
Oh, sorry, Christina, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Christina Jarvis, professor of English. I guess I'll just go first just to save on time. I know it's a tight session. And because then I get to gush about Scott, who is amazing, first before he introduces himself. It is such a pleasure to be able to present and partner with Librarian Richmond, with whom I've been collaborating for at least a dozen years. And he's been a tried and true partner. So this is quite different from what Mike and Christina were just presenting. In English, I have the opportunity to do our senior seminar class, where we have in our major a required community engagement project. And our department has been really big in terms of experiential learning. And so just a couple of examples of past collaborations. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the Big Read. One of the first collaborations we did called The Wild, and we had community book discussions, and they ranged from coffee shops to local libraries to the Humane Society to assisted living facilities. When we did Emily Dickinson, we had students doing blog posts and a whole website collecting their work and publishing on individual poems. I've taught a lot of upper level courses on Kurt Vonnegut, and we've had students design traditional library exhibits on particular books, on Vonnegut's life and career, short stories. So we've done a lot of different kinds of engagement. But after, I'm sure many of you felt after the pandemic that something kind of broke in you or your teaching. And so after a hiatus, I returned to our senior seminar and I said, I need to do something out of the box. And I really was focused on reclaiming literary joy and sharing literary joy and doing things that got our words out in the world. And so I kind of recrafted the entire course and wanted to also recraft the entire public engagement piece of it. And so I was just sitting around and I thought of yarn bombing. I'm not familiar if everyone's seen those trees that have, you know, they look like they're wearing socks or buttons, or you go into a park and you see a tank has been, you know, covered in yarn pieces. That's yarn bombing. And I said to myself, well, what would a literature bomb look like? What would it happen if we warmed, transformed, and just took a space and got people to think outside the book, outside the poster in some interesting ways? And of course, this assignment doesn't exist. And so I went to Scott and I said, hey, Scott, how would you like to partner with me on something that doesn't exist? I can't tell you what it will look like, where it will be, and what the students will do with it, but do you want to help me out? And Scott, being the tried and true partner that he is, said yes. And so I'm going to let him talk about the actual library instruction and the impact in Read, and he could tell you a little bit more about the poetry image that you see right there.
All right. Well, thank you, Christina. So hi, everybody. My name is Scott Richmond. I'm the Associate Director here at Read Library at SUNY Fredonia. And it's always exciting to partner with faculty who think outside of the box. Christina has been a longtime partner with Read Library and has done, I would say, would be considered one of our super users, similar to Mike Jabot as well. And these are the folks that they come to us and ask, you know, do you want to partner? What do you think about this? Is this something Read Library can help with? And we always say, of course. You know, it's always, you know, fun to pilot things, and, you know, if we see if they work, they work. If they don't, we say it was just a pilot. So when we had this opportunity to work with the Lit Bombs and, you know, kind of promote, you know, humanities within the library, right, as and engagement, and to maybe draw students into different areas within the library that they may not regularly visit because there's nothing over there that might draw their attention, or they're not in need of materials in that particular call number range or anything like that. And, also to have students think outside of the traditional, like, two-dimensional poster, right? A lot of folks are good with doing that kind of creative or, design and things like that. But when it came to the lit bombs, we also talked with library instruction. It wasn't necessarily anything about sources or, doing research or anything like that, because the student groups were assigned either an author or one of the, works, or particular theme like Black History Month and so forth. So the library instruction it was very different in the fact that we focused a lot on design elements, right? How to create, a visually appealing installation, right? And we would talk about the importance of font and, color and enough white space, or, not handwriting things, right? And also to make sure that you pick a space in the library and that you can make sure that you can utilize all of it, right? Or to fill the entire space. And so we have a few examples on the next slide that I'd like to walk through, right? So some of these, so the two works that we focused on were Toni Morrison's Jazz, and then Cristina Garcia's Dreaming in Cuban, right? And you can see that some of our students picked some really prominent spaces in the library, where they're on top of our shorter shelving. The Cristina Garcia hanging one that's in the middle there is right above the entrance to the library, so most people would see it. It hangs over from the music mezzanine. The one to the very right, which is focusing on Toni Morrison, where they kind of utilize this glass dividing wall that's in the atrium of the addition to Reed Library and kind of tried to do a stained glass motif, right? We also talked about utilizing materials that were in the Reed Library's collection in order to have items that students could, or patrons could, just pick up because they were interested in the exhibit or the installation, and then check out the materials, right? So you can see kind of on the wall there that there are different works. The one I would say that I thought was, it's hard to say that they're all very good. They're all very good. But the one in the bottom left-hand or right-hand corner was a really neat installation. So this group was focusing on Dreaming in Cuban, and they actually did a lot of smaller elements that tied into the work. But then they selected the area in the collection that dealt with Cuban history. And so that's where they kind of installed, so on the shelves and different physical items and things like that. Some of the folks too, with the one that was on the first slide that was dealing with Robert Frost and Edgar Allan Poe, then they utilized different actual quotes from the different poems and things like that, and then kind of almost made a scavenger hunt within the rest of the library, so that you may come across, you're looking for a book on the shelf, and you come across just a line from, Frost or from Poe and stuff like that. The other thing that we really encourage the students to do, because, valuable real estate when it comes to the installations, that any other supplemental materials that they wanted, so maybe for their citations, or if there was some of the ebooks in our collection, or, the Poetry Foundation or stuff like that, to utilize QR codes so that they could easily point people to those resources without having to use like a tiny URL or anything like that. So this is the second semester, Christina, that we've done these. And for the most part, we always have the idea that they'll be up just for Black History Month or Women's History Month, right? But the pieces turn out so well that usually we leave them up for the rest of the semester, if not longer, just because they do draw a lot of attention from not only our students, faculty, and staff, but also potential students when they are on campus tours. And often a lot of potential students and their parents will ask about that, and oh, that's something that we can do here, or that's really creative, and things like that. So really good for engagement. And I think that is all I have, unless Christina, you have anything else that you would, Christina Jarvis, sorry, that you would like to add?
The only piece I would add is that the students also wind up doing a lot of research about the text. If you look on that next slide of all of them, the one on jazz, for example, in the upper right-hand corner, they actually pulled out the theme, their Violet's birds in there, but they folded little origami birds from period specific sheet music, which they got from the music library. They also, and so those birds then were placed all over the library. So there's a lot of nuance and detail that the students are also having to do, and it's in a much more creative and fun way. So I just wanted them to know that there's a depth of traditional research going into it, or in the collage, the elements. So they're not losing out on a lot of the traditional research that we would do for more standard kinds of posters. That's the last thing I would add.
Thank you, Christina and Scott. Caitlin, I'm sorry you're a little bit rushed, but we want to make sure you have a chance to share your project, and then hopefully a couple minutes for questions then. So thank you.
Perfect. Good morning, everybody. My name is Caitlin Telford. I am the music librarian and digital services librarian here at Reed Library. Similar to my colleagues, I teach a variety of classes from a number of programs, but as interim music librarian, one of my responsibilities is liaisoning between the School of Music, and I also communicate pretty frequently with the visual and performing arts departments as well. One of the challenges that I see managing these music collections is that the music students are very busy and tend to be isolated as a result. So the challenge for me is making sure that the students know what resources we have. As a music student who graduated from Fredonia, it was very difficult for me to get out of that School of Music building. And so usually what happens is that I hear a lot of like, I wish I knew that you had this sooner. And so instruction is really where I can connect with the students and the instructors and make sure that they take advantage of the resources and services that we offer. My collaborating faculty member, Dr. Becky Warren, couldn't make it today. She is teaching one of her music therapy classes, but she sends her best. Music therapy is a very neat field to work with because they are based both in hard sciences and performing arts. So a lot of the research foci tend to be music and psychology, or people with different abilities. But they also are expected to participate in clinical placements. So they are out in hospitals or retirement homes, or maybe schools, performing with these groups of people that they are also researching. So Becky and I work together to kind of develop a plan of how can we help students improve their research skills, but also take advantage of the music that they may need for their clinical placements. So we developed earlier this semester like a two-part instruction session, the first of which gets them into the library, which, as I mentioned, can be very difficult to do. And our main goal is just to take advantage of them being in the space. I gave them a brief introduction to interpreting call numbers, and I made sure that they had a chance to navigate our catalog and find something that will be practical for them in their clinical placements. Once they were comfortable in the space, they came back again for the second class session, and we dove more into more specific like research topics, identifying your topic, building a search string using the library databases, more of a like traditional library instruction session. Music students are always super engaged in their instruction sessions from what I've seen, but this was a very interesting one. Sounds like I'd be making this up, but after the first session, somebody said to me, like, I love how these sessions like coincide with our curriculum so well. And I'm like, are you a student or a teacher? Like, I wasn't expecting that to come from like the student who's just here for a class. But they did really appreciate like connecting to what they need, like where they are in their career path. It's also very neat to see when I take them up to the music collection to look for materials, most of them find something that they do take with them and check out. So that is accomplishing my goal of making sure that they know what we have and that they take the time to utilize it. On the right-hand side are some quotes from, we do an exit reflection after our sessions just to make sure that it's on par with what the students need. And these were just some that kind of cemented that this was a very effective class session. And Becky and I are both excited about recreating these sessions for future semesters. And I want to make sure we have time for questions, so I'm going to leave it at that.
Thank you, Caitlin. I know we're a little close to time, but if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself or put them in the chat, whatever you're more comfortable with.
Thanks for sharing all these projects. I love when students engage with the library resources. I feel like so much of your work is seen by librarians. And so when you can actually get the students to understand what's there and to use it, that's fantastic. Any questions from the audience? Doesn't sound like it, but thank you to all of our Fredonia presenters. That was really great to hear about multiple projects in one little session. So we appreciate that. You're getting some claps from the audience, virtual claps. And our next presenters are going to be from Stony Brook University. Oh, go ahead. I don't know what that was, but Stony Brook, Jessica, and Sunny, if you want to see if your screen share is working. We still have about 2 minutes, minute and a half or so. Are any libraries doing anything for National Library Week? You can share that in the chat if you've got events going on. I completely forgot yesterday that it was Library Week, and like I said, that is why we chose this week for this event, but it slipped my mind. Jessica says this is our Library Week event, yes. We really have loved hearing all the different projects going on, and I think it shows how diverse all the services we provide are, to faculty, to students, to other librarians. We are good to go on recording, Jessica and Sunny. If you want to take it away, you can start anytime.
Okay, thank you. So hi, everyone. Thanks for inviting us to be here. My name is Sunny Chung, and I'm co-presenting with Jessica Koos from Stony Brook University Health Sciences Library. So we're both health sciences librarians. So the Stony Brook University Health Sciences Library provides resources and services necessary to support the educational, research, and clinical activities of Stony Brook University. Currently, that community is comprised of the clinicians at Stony Brook University Hospital, as well as our 6 schools. So the Health Sciences Library is located on the North Shore of Long Island, up here, as you can see on the map. And there's also 2 other Stony Brook University hospitals, as well as other collaborative sites and incubators throughout Long Island. So the Health Sciences Library is on the 3rd floor of the Health Sciences Tower. We have a 24/7 access to common areas, as well as a newly renovated 24/7 silent study area, collaborative study tables, pods, and then high top tables with monitors and computer stations and printers and scanners for our students. Oops. So we serve 6 schools, so it's dental medicine, health professions, the School of Medicine, nursing, social welfare, the program in public health, as well as the clinicians in the hospital. We have a team of 4 full-time health sciences librarians, Jessica, Laurel Scheinfeld, Michael Wong, myself, and 1 part-time librarian and 2 staff members. So we offer various types of workshops, including how to use EndNote, APA citations for student papers, APA citations for professional papers, how to use academic artificial intelligence tools responsibly in the health sciences, where we talk about what tools exist, such as MedPalm and Biomed LM, and how to manage risks when they're using generative AI tools, and using the DMP tool to create your NIH data management and sharing plan. So we also have events and workshops. These are photos from our health tech fair where vendors come and demonstrate their resources and apps. So these pictures are from last fall, where they came to demonstrate Complete Anatomy, Up to Date, Bates Guide, and LexiComp. And additionally, we also invited representatives from our Clinical Simulation Center at Stony Brook University. So that's the photo on the bottom left. And then this is a picture of when Jessica and I went to the simulation center. And so this was breathing. We also have yoga classes that are open to all our faculty, students, and staff, as well as PALS events, which stands for Pet Away Life Stress, which is co-hosted by the Center of Prevention and Outreach. So the photos here have Sammy, Argus, and Cody, and this was Cody's first PALS event. Okay, so systematic and scoping review services is another thing that we do. So what's a systematic review? A systematic review is a form of evidence synthesis, meaning that it's an analysis of all of the research conducted on a particular topic in order to answer a specific clinical question. So the searches must be thorough and exhaustive. They may include both published and unpublished literature, completed by a team of researchers, and might include a librarian as a co-author. It can take months or years to complete and are publishable in academic journals. So what is a scoping review? Scoping reviews share a number of the same processes as systematic reviews. They both use rigorous and transparent methods to comprehensively identify and analyze all of the relevant literature pertaining to a research question. The purpose of a scoping review is to provide an overview of the available research evidence without producing a summary answer to guide a clinical decision-making. Scoping reviews are a form of knowledge synthesis which incorporate a range of study designs to comprehensively summarize and synthesize evidence with the aim of informing practice, programs, and policy, and providing direction for future research priorities. The general purpose for conducting scoping reviews is to identify and map the available evidence. Scoping reviews aim to provide a descriptive overview of the reviewed material without critically appraising those individual studies. So our services can be either consultation or collaboration. So for consultations, we would advise on the research question formulation, explain to the team the guiding principles, advise on database selection, and then instruct on how to search each database platform. And then for collaboration, we would assist with developing and documenting the search protocol, creating search strategies, and then translating them over, running the search protocol and documenting the results, and then deduplicating the results and keeping track of the records in the citation management software, and then writing search methods for the manuscript and keeping track of the Prisma flowchart. So we do have an intake form which consists of 19 questions. Most of them are required. And then we have a memorandum of understanding which follows the ICMJE protocol for author roles. And then we have a protocol form which shows a 14th to 18th month timeline table. And it's adapted from Cornell and Western. And then it includes tasks, the stages of the systematic review, and librarian contributions. So on our systematic review LibGuide, we include steps of a systematic review, how to get started, different types of reviews to help the team figure out if a systematic review is the right fit for them, tips for searching, data management, and reporting guidelines. And then on the scoping review LibGuide, we include, is this scoping review right for me? Standards and guidelines, an example of a scoping review, the steps of a scoping review, and then the consultation versus collaborations tab. Okay, I'm going to pass it over to Jessica.
Thank you, Sunny. Yeah, so just to add to what Sunny was saying about systematic reviews, I'm trying to scope this to stay within the time frame. We can go on and on and on about this topic, but just for people that aren't familiar, the potential of systematic reviews to change care guidelines for patients is significant. So it really is a valuable contribution to the medical literature. And also, we've published many as partners with not only faculty, but students as well. So we are able to help faculty populate their tenure portfolios and help students enhance their research portfolios as well to get into the next step of their medical education, for example, residency. So it's just a very important service that we provide. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about something slightly different, which is research data management. So Stony Brook University Libraries has been involved with research data management approximately since 2017. So it's a relatively new service area. We do currently serve on a university-wide committee across the institution with the Department of Information Technology, individuals from the Office of Research, and other areas across campus, such as the IRB office, where we have stakeholders in data management. And so for those of you that aren't familiar, I'm just going to read this definition from the National Library of Medicine. So research data management is the organization, documentation, storage, and preservation of the data resulting from the research process, where data can be broadly defined as the outcome of experiments or observations that validate research findings and can take a variety of forms, including numerical output, qualitative data, documentation, images, audio, and video. So in other words, research data is extremely, extremely broad. It could be images from radiographs. It could consist of a checklist of experimental details. So it really is a very broad definition. And it varies, of course, greatly from field to field, from project to project. So it's really extremely important to make sure that everything is carefully documented when it comes to the experimental details, because this allows for the transparency and can enable other researchers to recreate the same study and the same parameters to verify the results. So I'm not sure if anyone on this call is aware, but there's been many occasions where somebody produces these flashy, hot results from a particular research study, and then someone goes to reproduce it and they can't, and their results are drastically different. So it's really important to the integrity of health sciences research to ensure that you're being very clear about every step you take, all the equipment that you use, and your systems in place to ensure that your data is reproducible and therefore valid. And it's also very important to ensuring that your research, any publications that are resulting, are not recalled or what's that scary word, Sunny? For when research is deemed unreliable and false. Retracted. Thank you. I heard Laurel say it from her office. I just blanked on that word. Yes, you definitely do not want your paper to be retracted. That's the ultimate black mark on your CV is if something is retracted. So reporting your details and good data management can prevent that from happening. And so also more recently, the trend is to share your data to allow others to reuse it. So the whole idea behind this, especially for publicly funded research, which I'll talk about on the next slide, is that if it facilitates the sharing and reuse of the data by making it clearly organized so people can follow the exact steps that you took. And when it comes down to it, the government is paying for the funding for these research projects, and the public should benefit from that by being able to look at the data. And we should also be more efficient in our ability to allow others to reuse it as well. So when we're thinking about research data, we want to think of the whole data life cycle. So it starts from the very beginning at the study planning phase, goes throughout all the different steps of a research project through the study closeout. And even once the project is completed in the post-study phase, then you have to think about how you're going to prepare your data for sharing. So for example, if it's medical data, it has to be de-identified. You have to find an appropriate repository in which to deposit your data and to share it or not share it. And then data archiving is also very important. I believe this varies from institution. NIH has specific guidelines on how long that data has to be made available and kept. It's usually a certain number of years that the data has to be available for access if anybody should request it. So if any of you work within the health sciences, you've probably heard that the National Institutes of Health required that now you have to produce a data management and sharing plan for all of your grants. So that means any sort of funding you receive from NIH, you must be accompanied by a data management and sharing plan. So this really threw a lot of our researchers for a loop. They don't really know much about the data sharing plan. So that's where the library comes in to help assist with this process to ensure that they can secure the funding that they need. So there's very few exceptions for requesting to not share your data. So some of those examples might be if your data just can't be properly de-identified, if it's protected health information, but you have to be able to prove that. So there's very, very few exceptions. Pretty much everybody has to comply with this requirement and share their data one way or another. So some of the elements within the data management sharing plan, you must include information about data type, related tools, software, and code that you're using to manipulate the data, standards used, if any, reuse considerations, such as do you have to make the data secure and only available to limited people? Can it be widely available? Things along those lines. And then also oversight. So the data management and sharing plan is actually a legally binding contract that researchers must abide by. And once it's submitted, they can make changes to it, but they have to follow it as a condition of their grant. And failure to comply with this requirement means that they might not get funding in the future. So it's kind of a big deal, and it's very important for people to comply appropriately with this requirement. So some of the services that we offer here at the Health Sciences Library, and we also have these services on our main library as well. We provide a review of the researchers' data management and sharing plans upon their request. So while we're not experts in all fields of research, we can generally look over these sharing plans for any red flags that the researchers might want to address before even submitting it for the first time to NIH. And so a lot of the times, they're not sure of what information to include, so we can help guide them in that area. And if we're not really sure, we can always refer them to resources across the campus or outside of the campus on where to find the information they need to comply. So we just started getting back a couple of responses from NIH. So we're starting to learn more and more, the more plans we review of what NIH is requiring of our researchers, so that we're able to advise them on what to change within their data management and sharing plans. So it really is an iterative process. And also, you know, honestly, NIH is still trying to figure it out too. So people are now able to bill data management services as part of the grant, so you can get funding for that. But NIH is still not sure exactly what that looks like. Neither are the researchers, so it's just kind of things like that are difficult to help researchers navigate, but we're doing our best, and it's really just going to keep changing over the next few years. The requirements will change, and we have to be agile and ready to change with them. We also offer several workshops. Sunny had mentioned one on the DMP tool that I'm teaching next week. We also offer workshops on the DMSP compliance as well, and also a just general research data management information session. So we're hoping to build on these in the future as well. We basically, when we see a need for it, we develop a workshop quickly and we put it out there as soon as we can. So we also have research guides across several of these areas. So we have a general research data management guide. We have one specific to the National Institutes of Health Data Management Sharing Plan. We also recently, and I saw someone from Fredonia had mentioned this, we recently acquired Dryad, the digital repository, where our researchers can deposit their data. And this is mainly for researchers that don't have another place to share it. So NIH usually requires that you use one of their repositories depending on the nature of your project. But if for some reason those weren't available, or somebody has a different funding agency that doesn't have a repository available, we now have this available as an option for our researchers. And we also don't actually teach the workshops ourselves, but we have representatives from Dryad that are kind enough to give workshops for our institution on a regular basis. So researchers have the opportunity to get an overview and to learn a little bit more about how that repository works. But all of the data in that repository is openly shared. And one of the other nice benefits too is that they curate some of the data as well for the researchers. So they help organize it and make it more clear and understandable. Also similar to Fredonia, we also have ORCID. So we recently became an institutional member. We're in the process of working on integrating that with our PeopleSoft records or our personnel records. And eventually we will be able to do that, which will make it easier for things such as promotion and tenure processes. So we can automatically link the ORCID record to our personnel accounts. And also, we've been working collaboratively with SUNY's Office of Library and Information Sciences on the development of RDM services across the SUNY system as well. So there's several task forces that meet on a regular basis that Stony Brook is a part of. So very recently, we just hired a director for this program in January of this year. Stony Brook Medicine has initiated a Center for Interprofessional Innovation. And so for those of you that aren't familiar, if you're not in the health sciences fields, you might not know exactly what that is. But IPE occurs when two or more professions, so it could be students, residents, health workers, et cetera, learn with, about, and from each other to enable effective collaboration and improve health outcomes. So in simple terms, that basically refers to individuals of different professions learning to work together to care for the same patient or patients. So it could include nursing, medicine, physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, and whatever other professions are present for the care of a patient. Social welfare, of course, social work is a very important piece of that. And the idea is to understand others' perspectives from different professions and learn to work constructively with them and communicate effectively, because as librarians, we have our very own secret lingo that consists of 1 million acronyms. Well, every other field seems to have those too. So that's just one example of kind of how IPE can break down barriers and help you understand what acronyms and perspectives are used by other professions. And of course, the ultimate outcome is that you're improving patient care and patient health. So that's very important. This is nothing new. This idea of interprofessional education has been around for a very long time. However, this idea to address it separately and have a center is definitely a novel concept here at Stony Brook. So the library's role in supporting interprofessional education is through participation in events. So we have an interprofessional education conference coming up. It's a half-day conference where we invited people from across Stony Brook Medicine to participate. So mainly faculty and students as well, where they can learn about the importance of interprofessional education. And we have a couple of activities that they're going to engage in so they can learn hands-on about how some of these projects work. And we also maintain a recently created research guide for where people can go to find information about interprofessional education. So not just for faculty, but for students. And also collection development, of course. We have a few books on the category of interprofessional education. And we also have, in our LibGuide, we have a running list of the latest publications that are in PubMed regarding interprofessional education, as well as a list of databases in which people can look for research. And then we also have a representative, me, on the SIPI Development Committee. So we make sure the library has a voice there and that we can participate and help support these initiatives. So I should also add that it's not like we didn't have any interprofessional education opportunities here at Stony Brook. It's just that now we're formalizing them. So for example, we do have something called the Healthy Libraries program, where individuals from all of our health sciences schools, as well as usually a student intern from the health sciences library, get together to provide services in public libraries. And so basically, for example, we have the program in public health where this project was founded. We have students from that program, from the Masters in Public Health, working with PA students, nursing students, and we're trying to incorporate medical students as well. And they work in interprofessional teams and they're deployed into different public libraries across Suffolk County, New York, where they provide services. And actually, this program really originated with social welfare because for several years, our School of Social Welfare has been sending students to libraries to provide social services supports. So they're also a crucial part of this team. So that's just one example of one of our projects that's been ongoing for the past few years, but I think we're going to see more and more things occurring. Thank you, Sunny, for putting that link in the chat. There's a link to our Healthy Libraries program, if anyone's interested in learning more. But I think we'll have more and more similar projects in the future. Okay, well, thank you for letting us talk about the highlights of our library. And believe it or not, this picture is part of Stony Brook University. This is the tunnel that goes under Nichols Road from the East Campus to the West Campus. It's a little spooky in there. But anyway, thank you very much for inviting us to talk about our library. I appreciate it. Hopefully you found some of this information useful. We have time for questions, and if you want to follow up and contact us, please feel free to do so. We can provide you with some more information on these initiatives and whatever you want to chat about. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jessica and Sunny. If folks have questions, you can feel free to pop them in the chat. And I'm going to just pop in the chat. I mentioned this yesterday, a professional development opportunity this summer, kind of related to what Jessica was sharing. This is an ACRL virtual workshop on getting into research data management. It's aimed at beginner level librarians who will be working with research data. So hitting on a lot of what Jessica's doing, but Jessica's maybe a little more advanced than this one. But we hope some folks can join us. It's co-sponsored by both OLIS and ESLIN. Any questions for these presenters?
And that's great, Corey. I want to take it, actually. It looks interesting.
It is virtual, so we thought that might make it more accessible to folks across the state. And it'll be 2 half days in July, and details are at that link. I'm gonna go ahead and pause. All right, you can take it away, Suffolk.
Okay. Hi, I'm Dana Antonucci Durgan, and I'm the college head librarian at Suffolk County Community College. And today I'm going to talk about a project that we're doing at the Suffolk County Community College Libraries in collaboration with the chemistry department. And so this is a SUNY Innovative Instruction Technology grant funded project. The college received the grant in 2023. And so I'm one of the co-leads on this project. And Dr. Yu Zhang, who is on the call as well. I don't know if he wants to unmute and just introduce himself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Yu Zhang. I'm associate professor from Suffolk County Community College. Over the past few years, I've been working with Dana on the project. I think it was in 21 we started the survey in the class for the students to recognize their spatial recognition of the molecular geometry, and got some feedback. And then in 23, Dana and I collaborated on the project, submitted the SUNY grant. We got the grant for the project, working on the VR to enhance the students' learning experience in the molecular structure and the drawing. I'll leave that to Dana. Thank you.
And one of our other researchers on this project is, and I'll talk a bit about our work with our student researcher, Sarah Shebleski. So I think she has class right now, so she may not be on the call right now, but I will talk a bit about the work that she's been doing on the grant as well. Okay, so I'm going to go over, we're doing a project where we're looking at drawing in virtual reality simulations. So what I'll do is I'll talk a bit about the history of the virtual reality lab in the libraries at Suffolk and how they came to be over the last 7 or so years. Then I'll talk specifically about what we're doing for this SUNY grant, and then talk a bit about the collaboration that I've had with Yu Zhang and the chemistry faculty that are teaching the class sessions of the labs that we're in to work on this VR project. And then talk about the opportunities that were available to have some student research associated with this project. Okay, so so the SUNY Suffolk VR lab started around 2018. And so we established the lab, and this was really, it was based on a few things that were happening at the college at the time. So our educational technology units that oversaw all the computing in the classrooms and any innovative technology reported up through the libraries and through the head librarians on each campus. And so during that time, we started to use the library model of buy some technology as a pilot. So one of the projects that we worked on was 3D printing. Work with our faculty classroom colleagues to bring them in, train them on using the technology, see where there was going to be some learning benefit in their classes, and then work with them to see how we could infuse the technology into their classroom. And then if this was successful, then the departments would go ahead and adopt the technology. And so we worked on this model with, like I said, with 3D printing. And then the next area that we were looking at was virtual reality technology. And so our original thoughts for virtual reality technology have been tempered a bit by just where the technology has gone in the last few years. So initially we had this lab open to students for mediated and unmediated virtual reality sessions. But we found that students weren't coming in as readily to use the technology, but that we could support really the classroom faculty that were looking at doing some projects in this virtual reality lab. So in 2022, we actually expanded out and created a second VR lab at one of our other campuses we have a 3-campus college. And so at our Ammerman campus, we did establish another virtual reality lab. So at the time, the technology that we were working with was the HTC Vive headsets. So we had 2 headsets set up in the room. some really nice gaming computers to handle the load of these VR simulations, some wall-mounted monitors so that whatever was happening in the VR session was now projected to the classroom and to the other students to see what was going on in there. And then we're expanding out to use the MetaQuest Pro to bring those in. Those are different VR headsets in that they're not tethered. So we're very interested in seeing how we can work in our labs with that. And so we did some faculty collaborations with humanities faculty. We did some social justice projects. We had students walking through simulations of war-torn areas. And then they would do a project after that, reflections on what they saw in those simulations. We also have been working quite a bit with our art faculty. And so, and we'll see how sort of this progression from art pushed over into our current project today. So in one of our art projects that we worked with, we looked at something, one of the free project programs, Google Tilt Brush. And so students were doing free drawing in Google Tilt Brush, which sort of to make a reference back to Harold and the Purple Crayon. It's sort of like that, where students are really drawing in the VR simulation in the air. And so our art faculty started doing a lot of projects in there. And what we found is that this program was very user-friendly. And as we were looking at ways to expand out virtual reality offerings to the sciences, this was one program that really provided a way for us to work with our science faculty, in that science uses a lot of drawing, and specifically chemistry. And so I just wanted to show some of what we have in the space. So we have our monitor on the wall, we have our gaming computer, and then the students are outfitted in the space with the VR headsets. And so when we were thinking about areas where we could use virtual reality to improve some student learning outcome, I had conversations with Yu Zhang. As he explained, we were working on some projects looking at the variation in student spatial ability and spatial skills. And so spatial ability and spatial skills, as I'll talk about a little bit later, they can vary from student to student. And with chemistry, and specifically, what you're looking at here is a sketch of a methane molecule. So there's a lot of spatial information that students have to understand. So just in this drawing that has this dash and wedge configuration, when you're looking at this, there's actually spatial information that's encoded, where the hydrogen is coming out at you on the screen, and one hydrogen is going behind, like away from you, or above the plane or below the plane. So there's a lot of spatial information that's encoded in a 2D drawing that students have to now render in their brain to become a 3D image of the actual molecule, which is important for them as they learn molecular geometry. And so this is a very difficult concept that students are introduced to in introductory chemistry classes. That's essential for their work if to finish the class, but also if they want to go on to other chemistry classes. But it can be a very difficult concept. So we started thinking, how could we use virtual reality technology to support student drawing of figures like this and other molecules that they're doing in that intro chemistry class. And so just to backtrack a bit, as Yu Zhang was stating at the beginning, we had looked at the spatial ability of students in the chemistry classes about a year or so ago. And spatial ability is that ability that you have to generate and transform abstract images. So just as we looked at the methane, if you want to, say, rotate it, that requires spatial skill. And so I have some images here of in C and D, these are two hands, which are actually mirror images of one another. That's an important concept that comes up in chemistry in other classes as well, is this this idea of spatial orientation. So spatial ability and spatial skills have been associated with learning in mathematics, engineering, chemistry, and other subject areas. And what's really interesting about spatial ability is that it's malleable and trainable. So it's if a student has a need to develop their spatial skills, there are ways to do this. And one of the ways that we're considering this is through virtual reality. So when we were considering how could we use the three-dimensional VR simulations, we wanted to see how we could use that to support student spatial ability associated with these molecular geometry concepts. And so there has been work on spatial training with VR simulations for flight simulators, for laparoscopic surgery. So there's definitely, it has been used for spatial training, just given the 3D nature of the simulations that are available. And so in 2023, we applied and we were granted a SUNY Innovative Instruction Technology grant, where we were looking at investigating the use of VR drawing programs such as Tilt Brush to support molecular geometry topics in introductory chemistry laboratories. And then from that, some of our deliverables from the grant are to design the molecular geometry activities for use in virtual reality drawing programs. So what we were doing initially, and I'll talk through that a bit, is sort of retrofitting to the technology. And now we're looking at creating the activities that are that work within the actual technology. And so just to explain what we have been doing. So in the fall, we had two introductory chemistry lab sessions come into the library's VR lab, and students were drawing their molecules such as methane in the Tilt Brush VR simulation, and students would draw in the virtual space. We wanted this also to be a collaborative project. So because a few things, one, we only had a limited number of the VR headsets, we wanted to see how we could work with students in a group activity so that they could help one another with creating these renderings or these drawings in VR. So we grouped the students together in groups of 2 or more, and this one student is outfitted with the headset. And so during that time, they really can't see what's going on in the space. And so having them go back and look at their 2D drawing of the molecule is really not possible at that point. So it's the job of their fellow peers to help them and guide them through the drawing. You know, so they're drawing things at different angles, and they can help to guide one another while they're doing this drawing. What we found as we did our first session is that for many of the students, they actually needed a 3D model to help them do the 3D rendering. So part of the molecular geometry unit uses plastic physical molecular models. So they create these ball and stick physical models. So the students were then asked to create them, and their partner was there helping them and guiding them through the drawing that they were doing. And during this time, the librarian, I was in the room, and then we also had one of our other librarians, Fabio Montella, who's done some amazing work in virtual reality with our classes. He was in there too, helping to guide the student through the VR program. So in the Tilt Brush, you have a palette, and some of the students were having some difficulty with using the palette. And so we were working with the students on that part of the technology. And then the chemistry faculty that were in the lab were helping to guide the students on the chemistry portion, helping them to see how they needed to revise their drawing, working with them on paper, working with them in the VR, because they could see the simulated, they could see the drawings on the televisions and monitors in the room. And so what we worked through was really an iterative process of design. So we started out initially with retrofitting the current molecular geometry lab activities into VR. And we assessed what was happening during the fall semester through student surveys and through just our work in the classroom. And we assessed what was happening. And then Yu Zhang went in and refined the activities. And really now the activities are more suited for virtual reality technology, the limitations, but also some of the benefits of the technology. And so actually tonight and tomorrow, we'll be running those classroom sessions and assessing this next, this new refined activity group with our students. And from there, we'll go ahead and do any redesigns that need to be done on the activities after we go through the assessments. So so far, for this year, we'll have 4 of our introductory Chemistry 100 labs sessions coming into the VR lab. And so part of this faculty librarian collaboration has been really discussing learning goals for the session, how we wanted to use the virtual reality technology to support students. And that really has been the goal the whole time. It's been so much fun just working with Yu Zhang on these activities. And it's been great to see the positive outcome from the students. In some of our sessions, students are saying, you should do this in our other class. So they're making these recommendations from us. Others have said, this was the most fun I've had, you know, in a class this semester or something, you know, so they're really having a lot of fun. It's engaging for the students. It's something very different. For many of our students, even if they have experience with gaming, they hadn't been in the virtual reality headsets. So this was a completely new experience for them. And for many of them, it was a very exciting experience to get in and be in this immersive virtual reality simulation. After the revision of the activities, so after Yu Zhang would look at how the chemistry activities needed to be revised, then I would take over and see how we could do this in Tilt Brush. And so we'll keep going through this iterative process as we develop these the learning activities. And so one thing that we learned from our fall sessions is that students were becoming overwhelmed by the technology. So just getting into the Tilt Brush app and working through the process could be very difficult for some of our students. And so a great part of this project is that we were able to look at, is there another project that could be done to look at revising our instructions that we give for our students for all of our VR sessions, one, and specifically for this group of students coming in to use Tilt Brush. And so in talking with one of our students that also works as a part-time library circulation staff member, she was very interested in doing a research project. And so over the last few months, Sarah had been working to design instructions for getting into the VR and specifically for Tilt Brush based on reducing cognitive load in the students. So we didn't want the technology to be the main source of cognitive thinking for the student. So we wanted to see how could we reduce that. And so Sarah has worked over the last few months to redesign our VR instructions, which again, it's going to be wonderful to use them in other VR simulations and classes that we have coming in. And then she also has the specific ones just for this project. And Sarah's work was just recently accepted. She's going to be presenting a poster at the SUNY Undergraduate Research Conference that's being held here at Suffolk Community College. One of them, so the one out over here at the end of April. So she'll be presenting that work there. And so thinking about what's next for this project, and again, this is an ongoing project, so we're still collecting our data and our assessments. We're going to be presenting the preliminary results from our assessments at SUNY CIT at the University of Buffalo in May. But what we're looking at beyond this initial year of the grant is seeing how we need to revise the VR activities even after the spring semester assessment. So what else do we need to do? We're also going to consider other drawing programs. So in these VR sessions, which are pretty long sessions, they're the laboratory section of the chemistry class. We've had a great time speaking with faculty that were also teaching the lab session. And one of the faculty recommended, while it's great to have the drawing, it would also be helpful to have these filled atomic models for the students to consider. And we have another program that's freely available, Google Blocks, that we're going to be looking at if this is another potential application that we can use with the students to help them with some specific concept and learning that. So we chose Google Blocks and Tilt Brush, which had been Google and now it's open source, because these are freely available products. The technology that we have for the VR is quite expensive, and then going any further with simulations can be just as expensive. So the ease of use of Google Tilt Brush as well as Google Blocks, and that it's freely available and really is an excellent product, has been an area. It's an area that we're going to be looking at going forward. And beyond this year, we can look at other areas where virtual reality can be helpful in other classes beyond the introductory chemistry class, such as maybe the introductory chemistry class for chemistry majors or for organic chemistry. And so this is an area of expansion. As I said, we have the virtual reality lab running for, we have a session coming in for 3D design on Friday. So we do have other classes coming in. Another group of folks that we're looking to come in and try out the VR is our astronomy faculty. So if you've the Webb telescope, they have a simulation that's really quite amazing with imagery that students can sort of float through space. And so in talking with our astronomy faculty, we want to see if maybe even the concept of scale and the astronomical scale for students to understand using VR simulations for that portion of their learning. So these are just some of the areas that we're looking at. And again, this is an ongoing project. We're really excited about the work that's been done so far this year with the project, and we'll be finishing up over the summer with doing our redesign of the learning activities after the full assessment. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have time for questions
Yep, if anyone from the audience has questions, please throw them in the chat. And that's a cool project. I'd like to see it in person sometime.
It is one of those things that is much better
Yeah.
in person, it's trying to describe the, immersive 3D space. Yeah, so for folks that are thinking about when we have faculty come by and they're like, oh, I don't know, I'm like, you have to just go in and just try it because it really is I guess a picture is 1,000 words, and I would say the same for the simulation.
Awesome. And Jessica at Stony Brook says they're in the process of integrating VR. So she may be reaching out. I like that this is something that's becoming more normalized in our libraries. You're great. Cutting edge tech.
Yeah.
Perfect. Any questions for our presenters? Well, we'll stand for a few more minutes, but I wanted to thank you and thank all of our presenters today and yesterday. This has really been a nice little showcase, giving us a taste of all these different wonderful projects across SUNY. So I really appreciate that. And